West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
I was getting the same text you were yesterday, Joe, which I wouldn't call them panicked. I would say the concern was a little elevated. Is this really happening? Seemed to be the theme. Are we going to lose this thing? Joe Biden remains today what he was on Saturday at 11:30 in the morning, the president-elect of the United States. He just is. Now, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot going on. As you say, the courts already have held up. So they will continue to hold up in the face of these challenges because there's not evidence being put forward. Even the two Georgia senators who asked for the Secretary of State in their own state to step down because of the way the elections have been run. He said, I'm not stepping down. That's a fantasy. Didn't provide any evidence. They just threw it out into the atmosphere. And the argument is, as Casey Hunt will tell us in a minute when she joins us, is that Mitch McConnell is so focused on those two Georgia Senate seats. He's doing this to fire up the base and get people out so he can keep the majority in the Senate. Well, at what cost is he doing that? He's firing up the base to hold on to two seats, which he should hold anyway, quite frankly, at the cost of creating this confusion and this doubt about our electoral process where there isn't any. As you say, the margins are so much bigger this time than they were obviously in 2000 when it was only 537 votes. It's not comparable, but there are a lot of Republicans. There is an attorney general who are indulging this tantrum. I don't think any three of us or any parent watching this show would allow the tantrum to go on like this, or to allow the toddler to continue to scream at the top of the lungs and then go into the room and say, what more can I get for you? That's not how you're supposed to do it, but it's the way they're handling it. It's the way Mitch McConnell's doing it. It's the way some Republican senators are doing it. It's the way the GSA, the office that ensures a smooth transition, is handling it. It's obviously the way President Trump is handling it by firing his Secretary of Defense. Create chaos, create doubt. It's on us to stay focused. It's on the country to stay focused and know the truth and tell the truth about what's happening in a fair electoral process. As Republican secretaries of state and Republicans on electoral boards have told us again and again and again, there is nothing shady here. In fact, this was a smooth election that Joe Biden won.
It's sound and fury signifying nothing. And the only thing I'll say is, yes, Mitch McConnell will do whatever he has to do to retain the majority in the United States Senate. But right now, what he's seeing in the state of Georgia, where Democrats and independents are going to be united to actually put Democrats in charge of the Senate and to run Mitch McConnell out of the majority leader's office, what he's allowing to happen right now is a civil war happening in Georgia. The people of Georgia elected their Republican Secretary of State, and they know him very well. And, you know, he's run a fair election. Yeah. And it's obvious because there were no specific charges against him at all. It has been a clean race. And what you're doing, so let's say, for instance, this Republican civil war where Republicans are attacking Republicans, which is just so idiotic. Let's say it peels off 5% of the vote. Well, you've got Senator Ossoff, if that's the case. Let's say it peels off a little more than that. Well, maybe, just maybe, you have Democrats in charge of the United States Senate. It sure seemed like a long shot on Election Day when we found out about these runoffs. But if the Republicans are going to be fighting Republicans in the state of Georgia leading up to this election, then suddenly anything is possible, including Mitch McConnell losing the majority.
Yeah. And Joe, you mentioned Jones Day. That's not the only, law firm that's dealing with these things, but some of the senior lawyers there are expressing concerns. They're pretty embarrassed, actually, that they're from, and they've taken on a lot of controversial cases. There's a piece in the New York Times that reached out to these law firms. There's another one, Porter, Wright, Morrison, Arthur. One lawyer has quit in protest. They're so embarrassed about this being taken on. So even these firms that you mentioned that have such an incredible reputation, and law firms, often, relish taking on controversial clients and really exploring the limits of the law to make sure that due process is there. Right. They're looking at this and just saying, please, are you kidding me?
Right. And the problem
you're going to take this?
This is what's happening now is this is what totalitarian regimes do. Right. And stay with me. Take a deep breath and stay with me.
Your hair is not on fire.
What totalitarian regimes do and tyrants do is they decide what they want the legal result to be.
Exactly.
And then they work back from that and try to find evidence, try to make up evidence to lead to that conclusion.
That's the phone line, it's
so that's what's happening here. And so, again, let me say again, every Republican, every Democrat, every person that runs for office has the right, as Mitch McConnell said, to have all the votes counted and to present any legal challenges that they may have. But here we are, 6 days into this, and there's not been one credible claim put forward by one Republican. You got Rudy Giuliani in front of sex shops and lawnscape places, just blabbering, talking generalities. You have generalities coming from the White House. Again, nothing specific at all. It's really embarrassing. The few people that make up specific things, I won't even say their names because they don't deserve to have their names mentioned on this show. They present no evidence of it. It's all just allegations, and they're just looking. Again, they've got their conclusion, and now they're desperately searching for any evidence that will lead to that conclusion, and it's not there. So the only thing I would say to law firms, the only thing I'd say to elected officials is, if you've got the evidence, bring it forward. If you don't have the evidence, stand down and let this country move forward.
It is Tuesday, the 10th of November of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash, a mere pinch of smoked hot Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world, and it always has. Always. Well, we're still waiting for some sort of concession. I don't think that we're going to get it. No, it's going to be a fight. And it looks like the Vichy collaborating GOP are right on board, just as we knew they would be. Yeah, I guess the great experiment is still hanging by, gossamer threads. Gossamer threads. Our democracy exists because, of an agreement among individuals. And part of the agreement is following the rules. Yeah. And not making up rules as you go along. Oh, Bill Barr, I love that guy. He's such an institutionalist. He's such a law and order guy. He's going to throw away a rule that is, decades old, and militarize the DOJ to go after voters for voting. Thanks, Bill. Yep. There's no word on the actual fraud in this election, and that's the ripping out of mail counting machines and, slowing down the mail. What about that? I love also how military spouses, now military personnel themselves, of course, but I love how military spouses have now been captured in this net of voting fraud. How dare you, lady? You said you were living in Nevada, but you're overseas at some military base and you voted absentee? That only flies among the people who know nothing about America. And there's about 70 million of them, apparently, because they voted for this guy. So we are told. The way the GOP, the way Trump, Bill Barr, et al. Are running around, it's almost like they're saying it's how we felt in 2000. Remember that look on George W. Bush's face and Karl Rove and others when maybe you don't remember it, but many of us do, when the presidential election was called for Gore, or I believe it was Florida, and there was this incredulity around that room. I remember thinking, something? They know something that we aren't supposed to know. And later on, Karl Rove even said, just wait. Florida's not done yet. And they were right. Because they expected Florida to be flipped for them. And suddenly, what? You're giving Florida to Gore? No way. We already had that done. And the way Trump et al. are acting is as if they expected the fix to be in, except they're so inept, they didn't actually set the hook. Okay? And the fish, which is hopefully democracy, has squirmed off that hook, and we're swimming free for a little bit, a little injured, could still be caught, netted. You like all these metaphors? And it's only Tuesday, too. Well, I believe that maybe we might squirm our way out of this somehow. Because there's a lot of us. I don't want to hear about, there's 70 million people, and that's a lot. I don't care. There's more of us than there is of them. They have been suppressing us for decades because apparently the powers that be don't want the mob to have anything. We being the mob. I like to think of us as citizens, but we're the mob, the unruly mob. And they are the overlords. I would like to maybe redefine all of those terms so we could live in a proper democracy. Yeah, we all wish for that day when we can climb that ladder to success, and part of climbing that ladder of success is kicking people on the way up, kicking them off the ladder. Hey, it's me instead of us. I might even argue that the whole idea of a president is too close to the idea of a king. Is that how it works in a democracy? We need a titular head to be daddy? Maybe. Or was that set up because citizens are the mob? And they can be the mob when you have 70 million of them who know nothing about America, who think it's perfectly criminal for a military spouse to send in a mail-in ballot from overseas from a military base somewhere. Or they know so little and then they make up the rest of the story because it makes sense to them. Well, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments right now Are they done yet? I think they're still hearing arguments. To pretty much take away our health care during a pandemic. Seems rather scary. And now, of course, it's not going to be taken away tomorrow. They still have to issue a ruling. And it may occur before Inauguration Day. So we have a gutted democracy. Lots of voids to fill. Hollowed out institutions. We are being held up, apparently, by just the stucco outer shell. All of the infrastructure inside has been taken away. And we hope to God that our new president and vice president-elect can put it back together. I don't think we're going to get much help from Manchin. Now, people are dumping on Ocasio-Cortez. And, I understand, why that would be. But why isn't anybody dumping on Manchin? Come on, did you hear what he came out with today? Oh, yeah, well, we got to have comity. The Senate is the greatest deliberative body in the world. And we're not going to get rid of the filibuster. You know what? I think you need to shut up, Lieberman. Yeah, I looked up Manchin in the dictionary, and it's defined as Liebermaning the Senate. Then you look up Lieberman, and it's Mansioning the Senate. It's really weird. We don't need this BS. Now, maybe all of us need to just step back a little bit, stop attacking us. There's still 70-some days left. And look at what this guy's doing already. Opening us up to attacks from foreign adversaries, as if they're not already happening. Who does this? What kind of a president commits a coup? And I know a lot of people say, this isn't a coup because their military isn't involved. It's always a violent thing. Okay, it's a chicken coup then. Just take off the E. It's a chicken coup. But this guy is trying to pull off a coup. And what kind of president does that? The kind that was installed by Vlad in the first place. Decimating the infrastructure of our national security. Who does that? Yes. Somebody working for Vlad. And I'm not being rhetorical. I'm not being, hyperbolic. I think it's actually coming to be more and more true. And we ought to do something about it. One of the things that we can do about it, and I know it seems like, it's just wasting time. I don't know, but we need to get 2 senators from Georgia elected. And the 2 that are there currently trying to get rid of their own Republican Secretary of State because he actually counted votes. How dare you? The reason they're doing this, did you see the percentages? I know it was like an open thing, where then there, nobody got 50%, then there would be a runoff because there was lots of people running. But the 2 Republicans were down in the 30s, low 30s. And Warnock and Ossoff were in, the upper 40s. Mid-40s, upper 40s there. Just couldn't quite get that 50%. So no wonder they're going after him. Because a lot of people think that Warnock and Ossoff are going to pick up even more votes, and the 2 Republicans. Oh, yeah, the insider traders. They did. They traded on stock, but they're also insider traitors as well. But no, they capitalized on the pandemic, both of them. Yeah, profiteers. And apparently, people like that. People who vote for them like that. Oh, yeah, can you cheat me? Well, you know what they say. If there was no supply of marks, there would be no demand by the grifters. All right, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Oh, well, the White House is now threatening to fire anyone who tries to quit. Yeah, that's great. Wow, they really hate themselves, don't they? Trump claimed the stock market would crash and people would lose their retirement funds if Biden won, but it did the opposite. It's booming. And the Oregon elections chief was fired by the outgoing Republican Secretary of State for pointing out the office's antiquated and vulnerable election technology, and everybody is aghast. Aghast. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Ukrainian president has tested positive for COVID-19 and will go into quarantine, and there's a few others in that government who have been infected as well. And Vladimir Putin won't concede and congratulate Joe Biden until all legal challenges are resolved and the election is official. You know, this is a chicken and egg question, isn't it? Which came first? We'll find out. And all that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Off to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. Of course, that's where we put the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and possibly send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, we have a proven record of stretching those dollars beyond compare, paying our bills, flying under the radar to continue resisting this terrible fascism that's creeped into our body politic, and it's been doing it for quite a while, too, and so have we. Almost 10 years of continuous broadcasting. That's 24/7, 365 for almost 10 years, a whole decade. Yeah, the little powerhouse that could, and we're still doing it. And we're able to because of your generosity, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and that is sincere. It truly is. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it's so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Thank you, Tom. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, and you might as well, because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's, and then post that up on Twitter at Justice Putnam about 10 minutes before showtime. And I try to do that, and then it gets linked up on other social media platforms too. Oh, I got suspended from Facebook yesterday during the show. Apparently they came across, now it was on my page, and I have been very judicious about not posting in groups. Because apparently groups, you get suspended a lot in groups. But now they're going right to my page, which is rather timely. They always do this right when stuff's about to hit the fan. And yet the right wing remains. Yeah, I made a sarcasm about the maggots and white supremacy and holding on to power by only counting what they called legal votes. And I guess because I used the term white power in a sarcastic sense, the AI considered that to be hate speech. I disagreed, but I'm still suspended for 30 days because there's not a human to talk to. And but the actual hate speech from white supremacists remains. They keep saying that they're doing something to stop all of that, and I guess their idea of stopping it is to kick out the liberals some more. Well, good luck. So I won't be putting it on Facebook, but we have some workarounds to do it anyway. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Amy Lou from the American Independent brings us this offering. Now, while the employment of Trump and thousands of his political appointees will officially come to an end on January 20th with the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden, the Associated Press is reporting that the White House Personnel Director, John McEntee, these are all like little young punks, too. Little brown shirt stormtroopers. Troopenjungen. Yeah. By attrition, our youth will just get rid of all the racism. I think that there's some youth who are carrying on the vanguard quite well and quite boldly and being really bullies about it, too. Well, he told departments to fire any political appointees discovered to be looking for a new job. You're not quitting. We're going to fire you. An unnamed White House source said that McEntee told department heads to get rid of any political appointees looking for the next jobs while Trump is still falsely claiming he has not lost the 2020 presidential election. Now, the source was unnamed because they're looking for a job. Meanwhile, Trump's campaign is telling its staff to keep up the fight for the White House. But it's unclear whether those staffers will still be employed next week, CNN reported. On Monday, leaders of the campaign reminded staffers that the election was not over and told them to stay in the fight. Stay. But the staffers employed with contracts that expire on November 15th have not been told whether the contracts will be extended. You know, Trump is doing a financial fundraiser to fight this legal challenge, and yet fully 60 to 70% of those funds are going to pay off his debt and not to his legal challenge. Just keep that in mind. Hard to stay in the fight when they'll be employed a week from today, a campaign source said, who's probably looking for a job too. After a staff meeting, a campaign staffer printing their resume in the office was yelled at by an assistant to campaign manager Bill Stepien, who's another one of those Troopenjungen brown shirt stormtroopers, shock troops. I hate these guys. All this is happening as Trump and his allies mount an all-out legal battle to try to prevent the transition to a Joe Biden administration, filing lawsuit after lawsuit to toss out ballots and stop vote counting based on unfounded claims of voter fraud. The AP reported that a delegation from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe that monitored the U.S. election found no evidence to support Trump's claims about alleged absentee ballot fraud. We looked at this, said the mission's head, German lawmaker Michael George Link. We found no violations of the rules whatsoever. He added that Trump cannot stop the vote counting, noting responsibility for the count lies exclusively with the states, and yet Republicans seem to be vishy collaborators, even in Democratic-controlled states. They seem to have been embedded somehow to muck up the works. And when I say muck up, I mean monkey wrench it. And we have a offering here at the end of the Bistro Cafe part of the show where we'll attend to that. Now, some GOP lawmakers are pushing back against Trump's baseless election fraud claims. On Friday, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania said there's simply no evidence anyone has shown me of any widespread corruption or fraud. Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois said on Thursday, stop spreading debunked misinformation. And Portman of Ohio issued a statement in which, while congratulations on Trump on winning in his state, said under our Constitution, state legislators set the rules and states administer our elections. We should respect that process and ensure that all ballots cast in accordance with state laws are counted. It's that simple. I hope we can reach a final solution as quickly as possible. Sure. Sure. Meanwhile, President-elect Biden and his team are proceeding with work on his transition to the White House. The crisis facing this country are severe, from a pandemic to an economic recession, climate change to racial injustice, and the transition team will continue preparing at full speed so that the Biden-Harris administration can hit the ground running on day one, a source on the transition team told the Wall Street Journal. The campaign's Build Back Better website now includes information about the transition. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is by Emily Singer, also out of the American Independent. Throughout the campaign, Trump claimed multiple times if former Vice President Joe Biden were elected to the presidency, the stock market would crash and Americans' retirement funds would be wiped out. But yesterday, Monday, the first day the market was open since Biden was declared the winner, the Dow Jones surged by nearly 1,400 points, setting a new record. It's proof that one of Trump's most frequent lines of attack against Biden was demonstrably false. Trump delivered the attack line up until Election Day. When Biden served as vice president to President Barack Obama, the stock market actually saw bigger gains than it has under the past 4 years of Trump. Now, after Biden was declared the winner on Saturday, Trump's line of attack has been proven false. Andrew Zaleski of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Oregon's elections director was abruptly fired in a text message by the Secretary of State after he pointed out serious issues with the state's aging and vulnerable technology for running elections. Elections Director Stephen Trout learned in a text message that as his department and county elections officials were still counting votes from the November 3rd election, that he was out. And that was on Thursday. Now, on Friday, Secretary of State Bev Clarno, a Republican appointed to the position by Democratic Governor Kate Brown, announced to county clerks and other elections officials in Oregon's 36 counties that today is also Steve Trout's last day with the agency. Election officials in the state were stunned. In fact, everybody was, except for the GOP. They rubbed their hands together in glee. Now, let's be clear. The reason that Kate Brown appointed this Republican to be Secretary of State is because the previous Secretary of State died. And instead of appointing a Democrat, which would have happened, well, if she had been a Republican, she would have, appointed a Republican. But no, we always try to make nice with these people, and what happens? This. And now this has to stop. Please. Okay, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. In the shadow of Wangshan Mountain in southeastern China lives a beige frog with black stripes. The concave-eared torrent frog, or Odorrana tormoda, gets its name from its unusual hearing apparatus.
It has kind of ear canal-like structure like humans and like most mammals. For most frog species, the eardrums are located on the body surface, on the lateral part of the body surface. But here, the eardrum is invisible because it is embedded deep inside the head, the skull.
Biologist Albert Feng from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Back in 2006, Feng and his colleagues discovered that this unusual anatomy allows the frogs to hear ultrasound, which includes frequencies greater than 20 kilohertz. Biologists had always assumed that ability was restricted to some mammals, because it was only known in bats, whales, dolphins, and some rodents. We can't hear in that range. The streams that the frogs live in are quite noisy, but most of those sounds are low frequency. By restricting their vocalizations to the higher frequencies, including ultrasound, the frogs are better able to hear each other.
The higher the frequency, the less the signal is distorted, or at least masked by the ambient noise.
In many animals, females prefer mating with larger males, usually because that's a sign of health and strength, and bigger males tend to produce lower frequency vocalizations. But with higher frequency calls being more effective in this habitat, Feng wondered if females might actually prefer smaller males. Over the course of several nights, the researchers captured 35 pairs of frogs engaged in what biologists call amplexus, which means while having sex. The biologists measured the length of each male, as well as the length of those males found nearby who were unlucky enough to be caught and also not having sex. Turns out, size really does matter.
The females of these are very unusual in that they really prefer smaller males over larger males.
Next, the researchers brought the frogs into the lab. Each female was placed alongside 2 males. Here, too, females opted to mate with smaller-bodied males, and an analysis of the mating calls showed that the smaller males did use higher-frequency sounds. The study was published in the Journal of Zoology.
We're thinking by females preferentially choosing small-sized males, that actually we can see the trend over generations. You can see the gradual evolutionary changes in the trait. Over multiple generations, they gradually develop these ultrasonic capabilities.
What isn't clear yet is whether the females are visually assessing the males for their size, or whether they just have an easier time hearing their higher frequency calls, making them more likely to mate with smaller males. That's exactly what Feng's team is testing now, by broadcasting mating calls to the females in a laboratory with the lights out. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
It's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Good grief, cry many progressives. How has America turned so right-wing that a flabby, narcissistic, wannabe dictator like Trump was even in the running? But wait, aside from a minority of racist, xenophobic, misogynistic voters, plus a bunch of uber-wealthy corporate profiteers making a killing from his rich man's agenda, most of Trump's rank-and-file voters are not right-wingers at all. To see evidence of this, look at the multitude of overtly progressive ballot issues that won majority support on Election Day, even in so-called Trump country. 53% of Arizona voters said yes to a tax surcharge on incomes above $250,000 a year, specifically to raise teacher pay and recruit more teachers. A whopping 78% of Oregon voters approved a populist proposition to put strict controls on the corrupting power of big money corporate donations in elections. 61% of Floridians voted to raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour, a working-class advance vehemently opposed by corporate giants and right-wing groups. 57% voted yes on a Colorado provision requiring corporations to let employees earn paid time off for medical and family needs. Between 53 and 69% of voters in 6 states, including in such supposedly conservative bastions as Arizona, Mississippi, and South Dakota, approved initiatives liberalizing and even legalizing marijuana and other drug use. Plus, there were some big symbolic victories, such as Mississippi replacing a Confederate symbol on its state flag with a magnolia blossom. This is Jim Hightower saying, the hope that resides in these progressive policy positions is the prospect that a truly great American majority might yet be forged, not around some mega politician, but around our people's basic values of fairness and justice for all.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was the day that Louis Ling died in prison while awaiting execution for his alleged role in a bombing at a workers' rally at Haymarket Square in Chicago the year before. Louis was born in Germany. His father worked for a lumber mill. One day, while trying to clear a log jam, his father fell into an icy river. Although Louis's father lived, he could no longer carry the same workload. The company fired him despite his 20 years of service. Louis began to question a labor system that would let this happen. He became a carpenter's apprentice. Louis then traveled to Switzerland, where he became acquainted with anarchist worker groups. Finally, in 1885, Louis made his way to the United States and Chicago. There he joined the Carpenters and Joiners Union. He became an outspoken advocate for the cause of the 8-hour workday. The movement had great success in Chicago, and on May 1st or May Day, thousands marched in the streets for the 8-hour cause. When a bomb was thrown at a workers' rally 3 days later, the backlash against the labor movement was swift and brutal. 8 men, including Louis Ling, stood trial and were convicted despite a lack of evidence tying them to the bombing. Louis Ling and 4 others were sentenced to death by hanging. But the day before the sentence was to be carried out, Louis lit a cigar in his prison cell. The cigar was packed with explosives. The explosion left Louis in agony for hours before he finally died. Some believe he committed suicide rather than die at the hands of the legal system. Others believe he was murdered.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
I can't believe I have to say these words, but the Trump White House on Monday told administration leaders not to cooperate with President-elect Joe Biden's transition team. Agencies across the federal government had prepared briefing books and allocated office space for members of Biden's transition team, but officials were directed to hold off on giving them access because Trump's campaign is pursuing legal challenges to the results in a few battleground states, and Trump has not conceded. A senior administration official telling the Washington Post, quote, "We have been told, ignore the media, wait for it to be official from the government." The head of the General Services Administration, Trump appointee Emily Murphy, has declined to sign the papers releasing Biden's $6.3 million share of transition resources. Meanwhile, 30 Republican former members of Congress called on Trump to recognize Joe Biden as the winner, saying that Trump's allegations of fraud, quote, undermine the legitimacy of the election and are unacceptable. The Biden team, thankfully, is considering legal action, and all I can ask is, what are they waiting for? Now, to take us further down the rabbit hole, Attorney General William Barr on Monday authorized federal prosecutors to investigate specific allegations of voter fraud before the presidential election results are certified. Eyebrows were raised earlier in the day when Barr was spotted entering Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's office. After Barr departed, McConnell took to the Senate floor to back Trump's refusal to recognize Biden's victory. Let's not have any lectures about how the president should immediately cheerfully accept preliminary election results from the same characters who just spent 4 years refusing to accept the validity of the last election. What? Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said Biden won fair and square, and that Trump's refusal to concede was, quote, extremely dangerous, extremely poisonous to our democracy. A closer reading of Barr's memo shows that he's sounding a kind of a cautious note. He wrote, specious, speculative, fanciful, or far-fetched claims should not be a basis for initiating federal inquiries. Well, that totally describes these bogus lawsuits that Trump is bringing. But the move is troubling a lot of Justice Department veterans, as it reversed long-standing policy against using law enforcement to affect election outcomes. The official who oversaw voting fraud investigations in the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section, career prosecutor Richard Pilger, resigned just a few hours after Barr's announcement, citing the policy's ramifications. Well, Tuesday marks 1 week since Election Day, and as scheduled, the Supreme Court hears the Trump administration's challenge to what's left of the Affordable Care Act. Perhaps the most consequential case of the term, it's brought by a coalition of Republican-led states and the Trump administration, who are arguing that the law's individual mandate is unconstitutional, well, they already overturned that, and say that the law must fall. Reality check for a second here. We're in the midst of a global pandemic, and reports say that we are now, in the United States, experiencing the worst of the pandemic thus far. Wiping away Obamacare would have a huge impact on the nation's healthcare system and the lives of tens of millions of Americans. That includes roughly 20 million people who've gained coverage on the exchanges and through the expansion of Medicaid to low-income adults, as well as nearly 54 million people with pre-existing conditions. Here's some good news for a change. The drug maker Pfizer said early data from its human coronavirus vaccine trial shows that it's more than 90% effective. That's a much better efficacy than expected, so keep your fingers crossed. The Food and Drug Administration on Monday also granted emergency use authorization for Eli Lilly's experimental antibody drug for some COVID-19 patients. It's the first antibody drug to receive such approval. Doctors will be allowed to administer it to patients who are not hospitalized, but who face a risk of serious illness due to their age or other conditions. Trial data showed that a one-time infusion of the drug reduced the need for hospitalization or emergency room visits for those high-risk patients. Donald Trump received a similar treatment when he was diagnosed with COVID-19 in early October. Dr. Anthony Fauci said the treatment likely contributed to Trump's recovery. It should be noted that Trump's acolyte, Chris Christie, was also given the drug, and it's likely that Ben Carson is getting it now. You and I, however, aren't quite so lucky. And if they succeed in killing what's left of the Affordable Care Act, even once it is available, we won't be able to afford it. So on Monday, Donald Trump fired Defense Secretary Mark Esper by tweet in what could be the start of a purge by the lame duck of those who don't adequately support him. And finally, here in South Florida, we are mopping up after Tropical Storm Eta flooded some areas with a downpour that swamped entire neighborhoods. Eta was the 28th named storm in a very busy hurricane season and the first to make landfall in Florida this year. Beware. Theta formed late Monday night over the northeast Atlantic, becoming the 29th named storm of this season, which officially ends on November 30th. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Expecting to be a tad warmer than yesterday. We were up in the upper 40s, expecting to be in the low 50s. Well, let's see, considerable cloudiness, and we're quite foggy at the moment. Winds will be light and variable. And tonight we're expecting a low in the upper 30s with considerable cloudiness and an occasional rain shower. Winds will be light and variable. Cloudy skies early tomorrow, with a high in the low 50s, partly cloudy in the afternoon, and winds will be light and variable. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon are now spiked at 2,380. That's 2,380. I made a weird mistake yesterday that we would spike to 3,100. I meant 2,300. And here we are on our way to 24. Maybe we'll hit 25 tomorrow. I hate thinking that that's the amount that we're spiking at, but it seems to be. Oregon is one of the 5 states in this coronavirus issue, and Jackson County is one of the 5 counties in Oregon who are spiking beyond what they should be. Pollen is rated at none here in the little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 24 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.27 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles. No, that can't be true because it's quite foggy. I would say it's down to 2. And the relative humidity is at 96%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. I'm not giving up the P-tape. Not yet. London is 58 and partly cloudy. Paris is 58 with a rain shower. Rome is 68 and sunny. Kyiv is 42 and fair. Kabul is 53 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 70 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 51 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 60 and clear. San Francisco, California is 44 degrees and sunny. And New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. The ever-present anonymous worker bees, this time at the Associated Press, brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Ukrainian President Zelensky announced yesterday, Monday, that he has tested positive for the coronavirus and will be working in self-isolation while being treated. There are no lucky people in the world for whom COVID-19 does not pose a threat, Zelensky tweeted. However, I feel good. I promise to isolate myself, and I continue to work. The 42-year-old Zelensky became president in 2019 as a political neophyte, previously known as an actor and comedian. He became popular in the country for a TV sitcom, Servant of the People, in which he played the role of a teacher who unexpectedly became president after making a rant about corruption that goes viral. He handily defeated incumbent Petro Poroshenko.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jim Heinz of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russian President Vladimir Putin will not concede and congratulate President-elect Joe Biden until legal challenges to the U.S. election are resolved, and the result is official. Where did we hear that before? Putin is one of a handful of leaders who have not commented on Biden's victory, which was called by major news organizations on Saturday. But Donald Trump's team has promised legal action in the coming days and refused to concede his loss while alleging large-scale voter fraud without proof. When Trump won in 2016, Putin was prompt in offering congratulations, but Trump's challenger in that election, Hillary Clinton, also conceded the day after the vote. Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, told reporters that this year is different. Obviously, you can see that certain legal procedures are coming there, which were announced by the incumbent president. Therefore, this situation is different, so we consider it correct to wait for the official announcement, he said, almost like they've had it planned. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.